The sun is not sunning. I am so upset. I have a big set, and then a deer ate my tulips yesterday. Anyway, let's get into it. So, with all the recent visa changes for Trinidadians, a lot of people have been asking me how did I ended up here in the UK and what was my process like and cost. And I have not kept a record of everything, so hopefully I'll do my best. I'll just do my best. Now, I want to start off by saying my experience wouldn't necessarily be the same as everyone else's, just because the rules keep changing, and even back then, things vary depending on your circumstances. I did not have a scholarship or anything like that, and unless you're coming from the same country under the exact same conditions and lived experiences, your process will look different. But I'll share my process anyways, and hopefully that helps. So, long story short, I moved to study, then I fell in love. I started off on a student visa and ended up now in a spouse visa. My first student visa, so I have had 2 student visas and 2 spouse visas, and I will explain that in future videos because there's a lot of details about leaving the country. And with the student visa, your university will withdraw sponsorship if you plan on leaving more than 60 days. With the spouse visa, you cannot leave the country for more than 100 days unless there's a specific reason. So during different times, I had to be mindful of that. I first came to the UK in 2013, and I have no idea what it is like to travel to the UK for the first time without a visa. The first time I came was under a student visa. I have traveled back and forth to the UK, and now I can travel back and forth to the UK without having to apply for a visa because I am under visas constantly. I first came to the UK in 2013 under a student visa for my master's degree. At that time, Trinidadian nationals did not need a visa to travel to the UK. That only came into effect March 2025, so very recently. Back then, studies longer than 6 months, you required a visa, and I had to get one because my course length was 18 months. And the cost of that visa was between $1,500 to $1,600, including appointment fees, I believe. I cannot remember the process or anything like that, and the process was pretty straightforward. So apply to the university, and once accepted, they send you the necessary paperwork, including a sponsorship letter, and you do your visa application online. You submit the letter online as well. You pay the fees, and then you book an in-person appointment. When you attend the appointment, it's just to take your fingerprint, biometrics, and any paper documents that you might have, but everything is really online, and all they take is biometrics in office. At the time, Trinidadian applications were either sent to New York or Jamaica to process. So I could not travel at that time because they send it off with your passport and they stick like the visa on it. And I can remember the first time was like, it was an actual visa and it showed like the expiry date. And the second time when I applied for my PhD one, it was a one-time entry visa. And then they give you like a residency permit. So it's like a little card, like a driver's license. And then that's what you use there on after. Right, so once you apply, you're good to go. They stick it onto your passport and you're good to go. You could travel back and forth and just show your documents. Normally, without a visa, you have to show a return ticket. But with the visa, that's the only difference to me when I had traveled. So then in 2016, I came back to Trinidad for 2 years. Dilly-dallied and applied again for a visa for my PhD, which was a bit different from the first time. It was more expensive, it took longer, and there were more requirements. This is partly because the system had changed and because of what I was going to study. So firstly, the UK introduced a NHS health surcharge, which I did not pay in my first visa, which was over £1,000. All these prices I'm quoting is in pounds. Since my PhD was a research degree, I also had to apply for a ATAS certificate, which was just a check to make sure my research was not going to harm or be a threat to humanity. I know, very dramatic, but that's a people system. Then the student visa itself, the second one costed over 1,000. And this one lasted for 4 years and 4 months, I believe. So it usually spans the length of your course, which was 4 years for me. but they do give you some extra months in case you want to graduate or find a job or whatever. Now they have the graduate route, or you can apply for a work visa or global talent visa after that. And just read up on each of them on the UK government website, because the graduate route is 2 years for any other degree, but 3 years for PhD and doctoral degrees, which is kind of the same thing for me. The global talent is 3 to 5 years, and it counts towards your settlement. So for settlement, you need to be under a visa for 5 tax-paying years. But under the graduate visa, now this is a tricky visa, and I urge you, if you have to, as soon as you get onto the graduate visa, but as soon as you get the chance, jump out of it, because those years, whether it's 2 or 3 years, for whichever one you go down, it does not count towards a settlement. You will be working, you will be paying tax, and it still does not count. So that is a bit unfair, in my opinion. As I said, the process took a bit longer than I expected because of the extra steps and delays, which actually pushed back my start date. I was expected to start in January, and it pushed it back so much times that I had to start in September. The first visa took like a month to get because there was no set of paperwork and charges. So I applied for that in December, and I got it in January. My second one, I applied in December, and everything went through for a September start. So one was 1 month, and one was like over 6 months. There is the option to pay for fast tracking, and I know one of my friends, she did it and she got it in 24 hours. That was not an option for me because I was waiting for different paperwork to submit it. And the second time, as I said, I was issued a BRP and used that to go back and forth. So there I was studying in the UK with my little student visa, and then this white man came up and asked me to make some swirlies with him. Joking. So basically, I fell in love, and we got married, and we had kids. So at this time, I still had 2 years remaining on my student visa, and I don't know if you could switch from one visa to the next. You have to wait. In my case, you have to wait for one to finish and then start the next one. That is what I was told with my spouse visa, but I don't know if that's the case when you want to move from a graduate visa to a work visa, or work visa to student, or however you want to hop. I don't know if it works like that, but my student visa had 2 years remaining, and at that time I was earning very little. So to just ease into the cost of it, I waited until I finished with my student visa, had a job so I could pay for that. So if switching is possible, it is worth weighing the timeline and the cost and seeing if waiting would be the better option. So around 4 years after the student visa, when the student visa had ended, around 2020 or 2021, I can't remember, I then applied for the spouse visa. Now the spouse visa has some additional documents. You have to show your spouse is working for enough, and that you're living together and have bills together and all that. And it lasts for 2.5 years, and it costs a little over 2.5 grand, so 2,500. That is the health surcharge and the visa fees and the appointment fees. I was lucky to get a free appointment the first and the second time. Sometimes you do have to pay. It ranges. Sometimes it's £30 for appointment. Sometimes it's like 200 and something. Sometimes it's £300 for just for appointment, for them to do the same thing, take care of fingerprints and biometrics like height and picture and stuff. So as I said, the spouse visa is valid for 2.5 years, and then when that finishes, you apply for the next 2.5 years, and it costs the very same, for me, £2,500. And I was lucky. I just made the cutoff right before the UK government hiked the visa fees to an absurd amount. So in total, the 5 years on the spouse visa costed me £5,000. £5,000. And like before, I was issued a BRP. I don't think I mentioned what a BRP was, but it is a residency permit. So it proves your residency here in the UK. And this one only lasted 1 year because it's all shifted to electronic system. And because of Brexit, I think that we're no longer required to travel around with it. before I mention that with respect to work and tax and settlement, the student visa does not count towards your settlement. The spouse visa does count towards your settlement because your spouse is your sponsor and they pay taxes. So it has to be 5 tax-paying years to get settlement. If it's not tax-paying years, you have to do a 10-year living here situation, and then that goes towards your settlement. So if you do like study with your undergrad, master's, PhD, and it all took 10 years or whatever you were doing here, and it all took 10 years and you weren't paying tax, that could go towards your settlement. The work visa as well, that goes to what, it's obvious, you pay tax when you work. So with my first student visa, that was my master's. With the second one, I had my child, and with my spouse visa, I was transitioning from the first to the second one, like applying, and I had my second child. So everything was covered by the NHS. It was all good, but we do also have private insurance just in case. But thankfully, we haven't had a reason to use it except for like hospital parking charges, which is, we are basically paying very expensive hospital parking charges. So every year, the UK government is constantly changing the immigration rules. They're increasing the cost and constantly increasing new requirements and increasing the cost of things. Recently, the government did announce that they will be raising the visa fees to help fund the NHS and the financial gap due to Brexit. They also want to make it harder for families on spouse visa by requiring both partners to be working. This is not, they're just suggesting these things and increasing the minimum salary requirement again. So they had increased it, and now employers don't want to hire international people because it costs them a lot. So basically, if you're not highly skilled or wealthy, it's going to be really tough. And if you think I had it easy, trust me, I have spoken to first gens and their parents had it easy. It was much smoother and they have a lot more benefits now. And over the 10 years of me just being here, I have seen how harder it gets each time I have applied for each visa. And the last visa I did get away with the hike in prices. Otherwise, that would have been a next stress. It isn't bad as I would say a US visa. It is a very big inconvenience, this new UK visa thing. I truly do believe it is unfair when you do look at the evidence. There is a next reason for it, but I'm not gonna go there. Also, I must say that I am not an immigration lawyer. I do hate paperwork, but I did all my paperwork myself. I have had friends that hired lawyers. You can if you want, but if you could read and write and fill out forms online and not lie and just be truthful, it is a simple process. And if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide. You don't need a lawyer. And if you need more information, there is a lot of information on the UK government website for visas, and things are probably changing as we speak. And I remembered when I filled out one of my forms, I made a mistake, but thankfully they did not make a fuss about it. And I know that the rules do feel like a punishment sometimes, but they do their very best to treat everyone with dignity. And if you don't like something or you feel like you were treated unfairly, you can complain. They do take that seriously as well. And if you are planning to move to the UK, I would recommend you upskill. Get that uniqueness, get something that they need or want or would contribute to the UK economy, lifestyle development. If it benefits them, they want you here. They don't care who you are. If it does not, if it puts a strain on their people, it makes sense, The level of wealth required to move here is so wild, not just for the visas or the paperwork, but for the actual cost of living. It is so high. So when I first moved here, my dad covered my living expenses until I was married and my tuition until I was finished studying. And beyond that, I took like little part-time jobs. I don't think I ever worked a full-time job here. I don't, because as soon as I finished uni, I went into mom mode. I was a mom in uni. I was doing my PhD and being a mom. So there was no time where I was ever single or had that luxury of working a full-time job. And I don't think I would ever do a full-time job. I don't know how people did it. I did it over Christmas this year for the first time in my life. And it was mad. Kudos to you humans who work full-time jobs. Anyways, after that, I footed all my bills and whatever myself. Well, my husband. My money's mine. Anyways, girl, if you want to get on this gravy train, let me know. Now I work and I manage my expenses and navigate the realities of adulting in one of the most expensive places to live in the world. I would love for more of my friends and family to move here just for that touch of home, but I would not sugarcoat how expensive it is to live here. That being said, it is still worth it. It is worth it. And I think that's it. But if you would like me to do more videos like with my birth experience in the UK and compare it, I have not given birth anywhere else, but I can compare it to my sister's experience and maybe others. I don't know if I have any friends that has had kids in the US, and I know my cousin, she had kids in Denmark and whatever. But I could just tell you all my experience in the UK of giving birth and the cost of living, why I would or wouldn't move back to Trinidad. If you all would like a breakdown of our monthly bills, to see if it's really that greener on the next side. So come along with me. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. If it wasn't, let me know that too. And please don't say I sound like a Guyanese because I love curry chicken. Bye.